Hey guys, still here, and today on Wargame we have a newer guy. This is Darwin Rommel, and kudos to him for setting in his replay, because he says this is my first online win. Following a spell of bad teammates in some games and me getting killed horribly in others, after finally working up the bravery to play online, I finally get a win. I barely made positive, but I'm happy. Noteworthy things here was team communication, my dirty filthy cluster already spam. It wasn't too bad. You'll see in a minute. And I think my micromanagement was on point. Hope you enjoy. I want to make a video. Critique is obviously much appreciated. A couple things before we kick off with the commentary. Going into multiplayer in this game can be scary, because it is very much an established game, and sure enough there are still new players coming in. But as a newer player, your stats won't be that good, and this game sometimes does tend to suffer a little bit from, hey, he doesn't have a good win rate, let's kick him from the lobby syndrome. So actually getting a game with a couple of guys can be tricky. And that's why I usually promote playing in teams where you communicate on Discord or TeamSpeak or any other means of communication, so you can set up your own guys. And now if you don't have a team like that, you're always welcome to join my Discord. Link down below in the description. There's usually people on at almost all hours of the day, and most of the guys on my server are happy to just have a newer player tag along. So if you're in a similar position where you're going, oh shit, online game, what do I do? Or I want to get into it, but I really don't know where to go, what to do, what units to bring, what deck to have. We have channels for that, we have people for that, so by all means, join my Discord. Anyway, we're on a 4v4. Pretty sizable area, and with a 4v4 you usually have a Schwerpunkt, also known as a spearhead, of two players going on one side. Sometimes it's hotel, sometimes it's over here, but more often than not I find that it's Echo Lima, because these zones are quite close together, and on top of that it's this column of cap zones, which, considering it is a conquest, can be rather important. Now they need to go to 1,000 conquest points in 30 minutes. That is ambitious. I don't think that they're going to get that done. That would require a very high number of capture zones to be actually captured and to maintain captured. So that might not happen. But still, we're going to see some interesting fights here. We got Favorite going left. Darwin Rommel, the guy who I'm following, is going middle. Amon's going right, and that begs the question where exactly Oswald Rabbit is going. Can we see his forces? No, that's Amon. I think he's going left, considering his TY90s here. Anyway, Darwin Rommel over here is using a Baltic Front General, and he's going to try and take over the middle area. Now the middle area is always a bit of a race for the base. Who can get there first? He is using motorized on some of the units. The Scots just plowing along at 150 kilometers per hour. Behind that, a couple of 185 KTs with that excellent Bushmaster 2. A couple more infantry units, recon infantry, and the Scot 2 AP. So everything is pretty much as fast as can be. And I want to commend him on that, because I remember that when I was doing my first couple of online games, I thought, oh, I want to get there fast. Whatever, I'll just take whatever transport I have. Mistake. You don't want a mechanized unit. You don't want something with tracks, because you can really see the distance that's happening between the Scot and the Wilk. And then the Wilk has 110 kilometer road speed, so this is the difference of having 40 kilometers and being a couple minutes in. Now, of course, the fast unit is the helicopter. And that is something that you can try, just racing along and dropping off some infantry. Fortunately, he does not run into any AA helos here. But this AH-1S, after having not been shot down with a Sokol, is definitely pulling a good number on the Nibiski Beretti over here. The rocket pods are devastating. And this is where I would change a little bit to the deck. I wouldn't have Nibiski Beretti in this helicopter. I would have Eric's. The guys with the AA missiles, you're going to see them a bit later in the game. They got AA, they got AT. They can usually hold their own for at least a little bit of time to make sure that the rest of the troops can actually arrive. So if you want to change something about that deck, make sure that you bring fast helicopters. And I think the Mi-8s, the ones that we're using, is pretty much the fastest you can get. This thing travels at 250. 300 would be better, but that would mean an MI-24. I'm not sure if they get those. I don't play that deck very much. Anyway, he has his infantry dropped off. The Nibiski Beretti are trying to clear the forest. We have Panzerjägeri, Commandosi, Formosa. This is a pretty good combination. These guys can take out most of the lighter transports and infantry. These take out infantry very quickly. And the Commandosi generally do a bit of both, but have even more anti-infantry stopping power because they got that 15-man squad and elite levels of training. So we should be fine. Or rather, that's what you think. But nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, and nobody expects a couple of Japanese tanks to be starting to clear this forest, running right into a whole bunch of infantry, and here they are. We got Jaffa Brand Jaffa Cakes, and he is coming into this forest with 4 armored units, immediately wiping out the Nibiski, and it's just 4K1s. Well, just 4K1s with a pretty damn good rate of fire, 3 HE each, and enough armor to make the infantry have to start to retreat. Hot on their heels are the Ahachi Kiyoshikis, a couple of autocannons, and 4 punch of frontal armor, so that means these are quite hard to kill, for an IFV that is. Now the Commandosi, I said they do a bit of both. They do a bit of anti-infantry and an anti-vehicle role, but not against that. That's really not something that they were supposed to go up against. So unfortunately, most of his forces here are getting wiped out. He does have some sitting in the back here. A couple of T-72 Wilkes, who he wisely retreats. I wouldn't be pushing out with these. Because at short range, sure enough, they'll get a kill. But they're going to be subjected to far more firepower that they can dish out. Especially at short range. So not engaging and actually holding for a moment and waiting for a better opportunity to push with these tanks, I think is definitely the right call to make. More helicopters coming in, more Mi-8Ts. This one already got damaged. Maybe he flew over the paratroopers. Because that's not enough for an AA missile. An AA gun would probably kill it faster. Interesting, by the way, how Paperback Rider was able to get his paratroopers all the way over here. That's a good push for blue, but we're not going to be paying too much attention to that. Now, speaking of interesting pushes, over here on the left, we got a whole bunch of Bachongsu with the transports and ZTQ-62G for recon. So, the paratroopers might be behind their lines, but the Bachongsu are behind their lines, so where exactly the line is drawn, I have no idea. You could argue it's here, you could argue it's there. At any rate, we got infantry scattered all over the place. Now on the far right, 2 T-80UMs, both alive, although for this one that is a status which is a little bit in doubt. Because one more missile and this is going down. There is a Hammett over there. Man after my heart, this Amon guy, because he captured an enemy resupply truck. So, really, really well done. You get kudos just for that. Anyway, back to Darwin. Darwin's bringing up another tank, more Nibiski Beretti. And we got more infantry coming in. XA-180 with ATGM, with infantry. And here comes, as he so eloquently put it, dirty, filthy cluster RD spam. Well, if you got one artillery unit, one ROK-76, I wouldn't really call that cluster RD spam. If you want to see cluster RD spam, they'll go into a 10v10 and watch the pretty lights in the sky. And very quickly decide that those are not quite pretty lights in the sky, but those are in fact really quite lethal missiles which are coming for your units. That would be considered RD spam. Anyway, this is of course a cluster unit, which means it does 3 AP to top armor. That is bad news for the K1s. If and when the K1s are still in this forest. And that's, well, it's likely, because they don't have too many positions to fall back to, but you don't know exactly where. And while this ROK-76, as you can see, does hit a fairly sizable area, if those K1s have been retreated to here, and resupplied, or repaired, which is probably what I would be doing in that position, you're not going to hit them. Interestingly, the Hachi Kiyoshikis are still there, and he is dashing forward with infantry. I really like this. Really good move. This is something that I should be doing more. and other people maybe should also be doing more. You hit something with artillery, and then you follow up with a push. And he's going for Panzerjägerie. The XA-180 is probably also carrying the Panzerjägerie. We got Nebieski, T-72s standing by to support anything that shoots back at the infantry, so the infantry is going to actually make it there. What you see way too many people do is just fire artillery and then sit back and do nothing. This, to me, already indicates that this guy is probably going to be a better player than most. Or rather, sorry, maybe not most, but some. Because some people just are content sitting back, firing their artillery, and just doing nothing. Which then, of course, helps the enemy, because, sure enough, their units have been wounded. Some of the units might have been killed, but you can always heal them up again. Well, some of the killed ones. Something that I would improve upon this tactic is that last time you knew there were 4 K1s, and you knew that they had those IFVs somewhere on the side. You can see that the K1s did take some damage from that cluster, so they are going to be less combat effective. But you did push them through an open area. If you bring a couple of mortars next time, you could just do with 1 or 2. Just throw some puffs of smoke down along this road, and then rush the infantry forward. Because the Panzerjägerie over here actually made it to the forest. But I also saw these guys, for example. These already lost the transport. And unfortunately are going to have to walk the way. If they had been subjected to K1 fire, they would have been dead. So a smoke screen over here would have saved that. Arguably, a smoke screen over here would also have been possible to just allow the T-72s a little bit more maneuverable space. Because then again, you can pull back into your smoke screen. The consideration there is, though, that you're fighting pretty deep in this forest. And over there, the smoke screens over there wouldn't be useful. So I think that the smoke screens over here are probably more effective. Now, I just lost one T-72. Chukyon Sa have a pretty nasty anti-tank weapon. And the other T-72 probably already took a bit of a hit after having taken on a couple of K1s. Here takes another hit from the Shouju Byontai. Carl Gustav M2, but fortunately not too accurate. And they are now too busy engaging the Panzerjägerie. In this situation, if these guys are both engaged with your infantry, you can keep the tank around. Because infantry can only fire 2 weapons at a time. That means that since they're now engaging the infantry, they cannot fire their anti-tank, that Carl Gustav. You could push the Wilk in and allow it to do more damage. Of course, when a player starts micromanaging, that's when you're going to run into trouble. And I just noticed that I can completely correct that last statement, because he is in fact using the T-72 to push in and do damage. Now, a bit of Mi-8T support does take fire. The big question is from where? Because the amount of damage that was taken looks more like an AA missile than a machine gun. This is quite risky. There, we're taking fire again. There you are. Whenever something like this happens to me, I always go, okay, what's the line of sight? I know it's not over here, because I cleared this. I know it's probably not over there, because if it would have been over there, it would already have been shooting back at me. So it has to be something either over there or over here. Now, if it's something over here, it could be infantry with recoilless rifles, but you would probably see them. If it's an ATGM, you would definitely see them, so it's definitely something faster than ATGM. It's a shell, and that leaves this bush as pretty much the only area where they could reliably be. So just place down an attack marker for yourself. Not so much to say that you know exactly what's over there and what's needing of killing, but more so that you know, oh right, there is something there. Because your mind is busy enough as is playing Wargame. There's a lot going on. You're constantly making decisions, evaluating the situation, trying to figure out what the enemy has, and just placing down an attack marker will make it a little easier. Now, something I didn't quite understand here is why we're seeing his XA-182s with, what is that, Panzerjägerie? Why are they offloaded here? Maybe he was trying to do a quick assist on the left flank, but I don't exactly get why. Because he had his hands full down here in the middle, And then suddenly switching over to the left is going to take your momentum out of this fight. Maybe you could spare the forces. Sure enough, maybe you could spare the forces. But can you spare your attention? Do you have enough time to both switch from here and then zoom out or swoop back over here and then do it again and again and again, and you're going to spend more time just scrolling back and forth or clicking the map, if you will, than actually watching the battle and seeing what needs happening. And sure enough, I'm all for supporting teammates, so long as you don't have forces all over the map, and that's what's happening now. He has forces here, he has forces over there, and now he has forces over here. And he does have a pretty decent control of the forest, for the moment it seems. He's also getting some assistance from Amon over here on the right, who's trying to kick out some of the Kutai with their VDV-90. Unfortunately, some other infantry just moved into position here. They're probably looking to relieve the Kutai. But so far they're not jumping to this building, in which case they would probably become a problem for the VDV. What do you have here? Formosa. Maybe he wasn't communicating as well as he would like with Amon over here. But the Formosa and the OHJ-94 would be more useful if they were over here. From over here you could start spotting what comes down this road. And you could start throwing HGMs onto transports that are bringing on new infantry. So make sure you get a little more aggressive with your forces over here and just push those in. Also, he does have a couple of transports here, 3 Scots. And these guys come with, I think, more Panzerjäger and Recon. Potentially Formosa. T-72 is now alone. That I would never do. The T-72 M2 Wilk is a 120 point tank. It's expensive. It's going to be quite hard to bring that thing back. In the sense that if you lose it, you're going to have to buy something else that can replace it. If you still find that you need it. Ah, there's the other infantry group. You pushed it in an unknown area without infantry support. That is, the infantry just died. When my infantry dies in a forest like this, I usually immediately pull back the tank. Especially something worth more than 100 points, I pull back. Because it is just too valuable. I don't want those guys to be dying to a position where they don't actually make a difference. So pull them back and wait for the rest of the infantry to come back. And then you can push again. Now you have Eric's over here. I'm a little curious as to why. Because the Eric's at this point don't do much. In my experience, these guys work best as flankers. Harassing infantry. So where they're, for example, trying to more or less solo clear this forest, they wouldn't be too good. But if you can have them push around here, that would be more suitable for them. Because they're less likely to get flanked by infantry. And they can shoot at enemy aircraft which are flying over. They can kill enemy reconnaissance forces which are hiding in here. These areas are ideal. Of course, if you really want to make a difference with the Erics, go 10v10 tactical. Because if you can flank them and make sure that they start hunting start hunting artillery, start nailing down command vehicles, that's when these guys really shine. And they're quite hard to kill. They got the anti-tank weapon, they got the anti-air weapon. You send a helicopter at them, it dies. You send an infantry transport at them, it dies. You send infantry at them. Well, there's still a decent chance of it dying, although they only have that Jetomatic, which fires 9mm. It's not terribly damaging against infantry, but it is still pretty accurate and has a pretty high rate of fire. Anyway, at the moment I think he's just gathering his forces. I'm curious as to why there is not a command vehicle in Lenid yet. Because he's had Lenid for quite a while. And he's had a good position in Lenid. The enemy, for some reason, has not yet captured Elena. Probably busier with bringing in more forces to actually secure it than to buy a CV for it. But over here, that excuse, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't go. He's bringing in Wilkes again. Oh, sorry, they're 85 point. T-72, if you're fighting with them in this role, don't need to be this expensive. I'm gonna have to take a look at the deck, but cheaper T-72s, as long as they have 4 HE, can really just wipe out infantry, and sure enough, they might not survive themselves, but you only need a couple of rounds to take down an infantry group. If you have a 40... sorry. If you have a 45-point tank, and you take down one squad of HBU 90, you already almost made your cash back. You got a return on investment. If you're bringing in 85-point tanks, they need to kill significantly more if you want to get their investment back. And yes, I know it's Conquest, but still, it is something that I usually consider. Okay, can we try and flank... can we try and push on the town here and flank the forest? It's already happening. Aemon's already pushing in, this time with a bunch of recon infantry. Considering his deck, I'm expecting Spetsnaz Gru. Assist these guys. Fast. Because these are really good infantry. They can take out vehicles, infantry alike. And if they don't really have a good one-on-one chance against infantry, they can always try to snipe it with the Dragunov. Assist them. Fair enough, though. It might be that Aemon was not communicating through text markers enough. Not exactly sure. Oh, look at this, though. Nice work. It's surprisingly quiet over here. What's the enemy doing in Elena? Or rather, what's the enemy not doing in Elena? Now, as there's nothing going on in the middle, let's have a look at the left and the right. The left seems to be pretty secure. We got BTR, Spetsnaz, so that's anti-infantry clearing. I'm missing out on recon here. We do have Spetsnaz VMF, but that's not spotting all the way over there. Looks like they're just pushing through. Oh shit, they're about to get pushed back. 30 paratroopers. Chun Maho 90, or Chun Maho 4 pushing in, getting missed by an ATGM. I think we need to be... Yeah, here we go. He's firing back again at the middle. I really want to pay attention to this. He fires another salvo of the cluster. It seems that we still have surviving K1s from the initial encounter. And Jaffa is not healing them up. This is when the T-72 gets a shot off and unfortunately gets return fire and has his weapons jammed. No, 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 pull it back. Yikes. Yep. You kind of deserve that. Maybe he wasn't aware that his tank was damaged as badly as it was. But this is when you want to be firing those ATGMs from over here. Not over there. Because this position is at this point redundant. You got recon here. Your ATGMs don't have the range to fire all the way over there. So your ATGMs need to be here. They don't necessarily need to be these things. They can be just vehicles. But anything that makes sure that the infantry or that the tanks are getting pushed back. And no tank driver likes to see ATGMs coming at them. At least not in Wargame. Because they're always going to do some damage. And the bigger the ATGM, the more advanced, the more damage you're going to take. So make sure that you bring these guys over. You need them here. T-72, another Wilk. Oh, and unfortunately these guys were out of ammo. Fancy landing, by the way, right next to that resupply bird. These would have been really helpful in taking down those K1A1s. Got a cluster. Can we see sparks? Not really. Although here, potentially. For those of you wondering what I'm doing, why I'm looking for sparks. Sometimes you're going to get a kill, which is markable by a detonation. You see a vehicle explode. Other times you just see a spark. And that's a vehicle getting damaged. It's like a tank shell hits it, but then the artillery, like from above. And the tank isn't dead, but you see the spark. That means that's where it is. It's a bit of a weird mechanic, but it works. And it allows you to more or less get a read on the current situation without actually having eyes on it. Speaking of having eyes on it, this T-72 was getting detected while in cover. So assume that they have reconnaissance over here. And that these are the ones that are spotting your forces. Now he's going to go for it with the Panzerjäger over here. He's also seemingly pushing forward the other sides of his infantry, so Formosa and Eric's. This is a lot of firepower here. Especially with the Spetsnaz and the the 185s. And then you got the BTR 80s, which also have a nasty autocannon. Here's the infantry. That's probably the 45 we saw previous. Yep, Habium 90. No fun. Very hard to dislodge. Because they're survivable. A 10-man infantry squad is far easier to kill because you're actually likely to kill all 10 of them. With a Habium 90 group, it just takes more time, and if one of them survives, they can fall back and they can get healed up, and you're gonna face them again. So that's why I say that the Habium 90 is just far more survivable. Interestingly, he's not actually getting any spots here, Amon. I was thinking he'd see more. Oh shit, there goes your transport. At least we know there's another K1A1 here. Which, considering the damage that he's taken, might have been the subject of an artillery bombardment or an earlier tank engagement. HEGM infantry here would immediately kill the tank. Especially since that tank seems to have been very intent on pushing back these transports and the infantry. So it was facing that way, and you can get a perfect side shot from here. And yes, I know, I'm giving all this stuff back after the fact. Which is easy, because I'm not actually in the game. I don't have to make all decisions, I just watch and I point out what can be done better. But then again, that was the request for this particular video. AH-1J coming in. Looks like he's really concerned about the infantry. There comes an Su-24M, dropping off its packages. Good hit. I was a little torn about the Su-24M. Sure enough, it has the potential to do a lot of damage. But I find that if you hit with them somewhere in a town, they just... well... you got too many survivors. And that is the problem. You got too many survivors. Uh-oh. Too close. You're dropping off your infantry way too close with the Super Puma. Oh, by the way, this is the helo that you want for your early rushes. You have them. If you want to do something like that again, like you did on at the start of the game, like rushing the town, bring these Super Pumas. Ideally, not so much in one flight, so not one flight of 2 helicopters, but several flights of 1. So they're spaced out more, and they don't all take the same missile hit. Drop these guys off, and then you have a little bit more time for the rest of your assumedly motorized transports or your Mi-8s to come in. That would be my recommendation. Now he's bringing in T-55s, or rather TO-55s, the napalm ones. I'm surprised that the Habium haven't killed them yet. The Habium probably got pulled back. Look at that. This is one way of clearing a town. Considering how open it is, I'm actually really surprised that they're not dead. But it's also giving you quite good information, because it means that there's no HGMs here, there, or here. So at the moment, you can probably just keep pushing. There they are. So they have taken some damage from the artillery bombardment, but not really as much as you'd expect. And there go the Habium 90. Immediately killing off one of the TO-55s. The other one's also taking fire from the Suzak Day, but this is only a 5-man squad with inferior anti-tank weapon. I hope he's not trying to barbecue his own infantry here. Okay, no, they picked the right building. They picked the right building. The Habium 90 are now going down quick. But that's thanks to the Spetsnaz and the Panzerjäger, and I think the 185 also was assisting. Though, how exactly, I'm a little confused on. Look at these guys go. This is some of my favorite infantry in the game. That's mostly down to the Second Korean War, where these guys, you can drop them off and they're just really, really good at holding their own. Anti-infantry, anti-tank, doesn't matter. Of course, subjecting them to napalm and aerial bombardments doesn't help their cause, and will make it quite difficult for them to survive. But then, fortunately, in the Second Korean War, the AI doesn't do that. Now, TDUM dashing forward, quite risky, in fact. With because there is not too much spotting going on. Sure enough, there is the BMP-1KT. There goes the Tunguska, unfortunately. I really don't like your AA situation. Where's the nearest AA weapon? I'm seeing one marksman. Period. That's it. Holy shit. This is really risky. If the enemy really wants you gone and figures out that you might not have as much AA as they think you might have, because for some reason I'm barely seeing any planes or helicopters come in from blue, then they're going to push you hard. You're going to see airstrikes constantly landing on this town, and you're going to see potentially helicopters wiping out the infantry because you don't have anything. And this marksman, where it is, doesn't even fire because it's too deep inside the forest. It cannot fire at anything that's not directly flying overhead. More Habium. One goes... No. Did they go down? Because they did go hardened. I think they're still alive. Now, the use of the CO-55 I really like, but is too close to the battle. And you can see that the Habium just take it out with one shot. Spatsnaz are moving in. These should have really no trouble fighting off the Habium. As long as there is not something backing up the Habium in the form of a transport or a tank. Speaking of... Where's the ATGM unit that was originally here? I think they died. Anyway, the Erics. Ah, we finally have some AA. Cobra comes in. You won't be able to kill that, because it has too much hit points. AGGM unit being dropped off. Being dropped off. Eventually. At some point. Now would be a good time though. Any day now. Come on, you could have had the shots on the LVDP-7s. There we are. And now you're blocking your own line of sight. These buildings are making it harder for these guys to actually get a hit. So, get the Formosa potentially slightly further back, and then move the ATGMs forward, or move the ATGMs here, from where they could get line of sight. Right now, their line of sight is pretty bad, because they're going for this tree line, but only so far as they don't get blocked by this building here. This building is one big block. So they can fire out to there, or they can fire out to here, but not through here. Which means that you're losing out on this entire sector of fire. So relocate your ATGMs, put them over there, and then they have a better chance of actually getting a kill. Oh, the BMP is empty. It could go after the Cobra with a machine gun and probably get the kill, but the Bushmaster is empty. Now, at this point, the game is pretty much decided. They have 369 points. They got a +2. There might even be... No, there's not a CV on the move. I was going to say there might even be a CV coming for Elena, which would put them at a +3. But, yeah, this game is pretty much done. Okay. I gave quite a few pointers. The most important, I think, or at least I always try to tell people how to improve a few points. Don't give people a list of 20 to 25 points that they can improve upon. Say, hey, if you just focus on these one or two things, you're going to have a different result. That is usually far easier to manage. One, smoke screens. You pushed several times on this forest and on this town without the use of smoke. And that got your units killed. So just practice a little bit with using more smoke. And two, if you want to get this town early, bring your Super Pumas and get those Erics in there. They're going to usually hold out long enough for the rest of your forces to survive. Just focus on those two things. That's all. Smoke screens and getting an advanced position early. That's all that I would focus on. Yeah, and maybe a third if you're feeling ambitious, because I don't mean this in a condescending way. I mean, it could get contrived like that, but it's not. What I mean is that if you're getting the hang of Wargame, there is so much going on. And not only are you trying to manage your own forces, you're also trying to figure out what the enemy's doing, where the enemy's going, where you're going next, what your artillery should be doing, where there are units that are spotting you, what your teammates are doing, what your teammates are asking you to do, and then potentially you have up to 10 people shouting in your ear on Discord. So when I say if you're feeling ambitious, go for a third thing, it's not that I think people cannot do it. I think it's that people are just overwhelmed, especially when starting out with this game. So that's why I'm giving them only 1 or 2 pointers. So smoke screens and fast helos, that's enough. Just focus on that and see how that works out. If you want to go for a third thing, try to figure out a better position for your HGMs, because now they're in the better position, but they could have been here a couple of minutes ago and would have had better lines of fire. And it's not just here, it was also back there, here. Because from here they just couldn't do much. So making sure that they get a better position, potentially down here, where they can take fire or take shots at those tanks, that would have been more useful. Anyway, blue is trying to do some sort of a pushback, but it's really not enough. A whole bunch of infantry wide out in the open. I think the transports just got blown up. Yeah. Anyway, keep in mind, this was his first online win. And I think that for a first online win, he played really well. Sure enough, there are some things that he could improve upon, but don't we all have those? If you saw anything that he could improve upon, then let me know down below in the comments. Constructive shit only. I'm just going to kick off any comments that are plainly hateful or unconstructive or stuff like that. I'm trying to help people get into this game, not demotivate them and go, oh, you're shit. This was a painful game to watch. Because, and this is more of a personal pet peeve of mine, sometimes I get comments on my videos saying this was painful to watch. And then I'm thinking, okay, exactly what was painful to watch? Was my gameplay painful to watch? Was the way that I treated the enemy painful to watch? Was the whole game mode painful to watch? Is there something wrong with your eyes and do you need to go to an eye doctor? Is that painful to watch? It's just not giving enough information, and it makes it out to be personal and saying, oh, this is painful to watch, you're a shit player. It doesn't help anybody, and it just makes you a very, very poor communicator. So, let's not have anything go up again like, this is painful to watch. Because as of right now, I'm going to start to really crack down on those. I'm just going to delete them. It just doesn't make sense. You're just a poor communicator when you only write, this is painful to watch. Because it's open to so many different interpretations. Anyway, /S for a rant. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Interesting game. He did get a decent amount of kills versus losses. He just made positive, but then again, first online win. Good game. I already gave you your pointers. Kill list looks decent. What got you most losses? That's also quite interesting, because then you can try to focus on that and do a little better next time. K1, 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 K1. Yeah, that's your problem. The K1s. The infantry that you have in your deck does not quite have the punch up short range to kill these things. So either take them out at longer range, but in a force that's impossible, or find out other ways to bring these things down. Aside from that, it's not too bad. It's just the tanks. That's something that you need to figure out a better defense against. Anyway, with that ends the game, ends the video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. Let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comments. And I shall see you guys soon for another video.